Jim, I'm going to make you host.
All righty.
And all right, Jim, you're all good.
Thank you very much. I lost Wes, but I have a feeling he'll be back. So, well, hello, welcome. I'm very excited today. Life Copilot is excited to bring to you a group of experts on how you're going to pay for all this senior stuff. It is a very scary thing. I know that I've been through it with my own family more than once, trying to figure out what we're going to do with all this. And we've got some voices here that can really help us understand. I'm going to just kind of go through an introduction right now. Jamie, you're next to me on the screen right now, so I'll let you introduce yourself, who you are, what you do.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. I'm Jamie Hopper, registered financial consultant and president with Money Concepts. Basically, what I do is I help families prepare for senior life. And we do that by helping them get retirement income planning set up, having that separate bucket of money so they know what amount's going to come in every month. And then we also prepare for future obstacles. We help families prepare for long-term care events with long-term care insurance. And there are a lot of different ways we can do that. And then we also help them leave a legacy. So I'd like to say that we're pretty full service. We do more than just help people build wealth. We help them make sure they've got a plan to spend it back down and help them sleep at night.
Well, that's a nice thing to do. Rebecca, tell us who you are, what your company is, and what you do.
Sure. I'm Rebecca Geyer. I'm an attorney with Rebecca Geyer and Associates, and we're an estate planning and elder law firm. So we meet with individuals and families to assist them both in preparing an estate plan, which might include wills and trusts or powers of attorney, advanced medical directives. But we also meet with individuals as they age. If they don't have financial wherewithal to provide for themselves as they age, we'll talk with families about potential governmental benefits that might be available to them to assist in keeping individuals independent, as well as pay for the costs of care. So we deal with issues involving Medicaid, veterans benefits, sometimes Medicare and Social Security as well.
Great. Wes, tell me who you are and what you guys do.
Yes, good afternoon now, I guess. Yes. So Wesley Young with Senior Solutions Consulting. We do Medicaid waiver, Medicaid, VA benefits to help cover costs for in-home care, assisted living, nursing home, and all the fun items that go with all of that. So just benefits and asset protection.
Well, thank you very much. So guys, I'm really glad to have you here today. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because I've been given bad information when I was dealing with my own family before I learned about you guys and what true information is out there, so I know that a lot of people in that situation. I was in a conversation about this exact topic yesterday with someone that had absolutely, they're dealing with it. They had no idea the resources. And in full disclosure, I'm probably sending somebody to each one of you guys at least once a month, telling people to go to you. Now, whether they call or not, that's up to them. But I'm directing people to you all the time going, these are people you need to talk to before you make bad choices. So what we're going to talk about is how does this money come from? How can we do this? Where can we find resources? And some of the things that I think very few people really understand, especially in Indiana, is how good of a systems we have available to people through now, with Jamie, we need to get with you probably sooner rather than later to get this thing going. But really, frankly, with Rebecca, with Wes, we probably do as well, because there's all these things called lookbacks, 3-year lookbacks, 5-year lookbacks. What do you guys recommend? Somebody that's kind of, and we have a good group of people here today. I have no idea what we have on Facebook. We have a good group of people here looking at us today. So that tells me that people are trying to figure this stuff out. So what would you tell people that are looking at this? Maybe it's themselves, maybe it's a family member that is coming up towards age that maybe some of these resources are going to need to be tapped into. What would you tell people to kind of look to be doing ahead of time? And I don't care who starts with this.
Well, I would certainly tell people you want to make sure you consult with someone like myself or Wes or Jamie, depending on where you are in this process to make sure you understand what the actual rules are and how they apply to your circumstances. There is a lot of information that is available out on the internet, and it can be confusing to hear things like 3-year look back periods and 5-year look back periods, but those rules don't always have to apply to your particular situation. Oftentimes those look back periods aren't even triggered unless certain gifts were made or we're trying to do a certain type of pre-planning. There are a lot of other rules which apply in situations where if nothing has been done and you have a loved one who's now in need of care, we can potentially qualify them for VA or Medicaid benefits or other types of assistance right away without triggering those look back periods. So you need to know how you fit into the laws as they're currently written, what assets might be countable, what assets might not be countable, so that you know how to address these situations for your particular circumstances, rather than just reading something on the web which may or may not apply to your situation. You want to make sure you understand what your path is going forward and what your options are to pay for the costs of care.
Very good. Wes, do you want to add to that? Or?
Yeah, and yeah, I 100% agree with all that, and you, Jim, you said about, getting in and talking early. Obviously, if you get in early enough, long-term care insurance is a great way to protect assets. If you have, I say sizable, that all depends on the person, but sizable assets, long-term care insurance is always a welcomed item when we're talking to a client or a family and we see that they have that. That's probably the first best way to protect things. But of course, when you're, my 2 clients this morning were 95 years old. That's a little out of the question to ask for that at this point. But again, the longer amount of time we have, the better, because we're always dealing with things like life insurance companies and investments and things like that. And taxes are always a big part of moving money and consolidating and doing whatever it is we might do to fit a plan that we would create. So obviously, if you give us years versus days, we can do a lot better work, and just the sooner you get in, the better. Even though we can do I know Rebecca and I and everyone else, we can do a pretty good job with crisis planning, which is what we get most of the time, because none of this is ever going to happen to anyone until it does. And then we do what's called crisis planning. So every day or month or year, we can plan ahead of time. We can just do that much better of a job.
Well, I think that, that's a real good point on the crisis planning. Our family we have been really consistent of waiting until the last second so that we can deal with the crisis planning. And we've done it multiple times. We're really good at it. Yes. But, I'm sure that everyone else plans, 5 years ahead, but ours has not been so good at that. But one of the things that I was just in, like I said, I was in a conversation yesterday, and people have this belief that they can't get resources unless they're absolutely destitute. And that is not the case, especially I know in Indiana, you guys have told me and taught me that Indiana's got very good rules to operate to protect things. And I know that I've gone through the process with a family member with one of you guys, and they helped me get through the process. It was amazing. It was like I tried to do it without it on a do-it-yourself basis. Horrible experience. Found out that it works so much better when I have a professional in your pocket. So when there is, let's say there is a crisis situation, you don't have to be destitute. For instance, but the thing is, the information is not out there well unless people find out about you and what you guys really do. Because I was telling people this on a social media platform, and I made a comment. I said, at least go to SACOA and ask them. Okay. Well, it kind of depends on who picks up the phone. Okay. So this particular person went to SACOA. They got, which I'm not picking on SACOA. It's just, again, it's getting the right information from the right person. And when they asked the question, they were read out of the book. You have to have no more than $2,000 assets. You can't have more than whatever the deal was. So they went back to the same thing, that they have to be destitute, because that person didn't go beyond reading the book to go, here's places you can go to learn more. Could you explain what is let's break it down, and I'll let you guys figure this to do this, but explain what VA aid and attendance is, how you access it, what the rules are, and then also on what Medicaid and Medicaid waiver is. I think that we have people that don't really understand that. Let's just kind of start with the very beginning of that.
I can take VA. I've been doing it for about 21 years now, and they've changed the rules a few times along the way. We're up to maybe 45 pages of application with the VA, and the VA is very consistent with being inconsistent. So, you'll fill out one box as claimant, one box as applicant, one box as, spouse. So and if you don't get things in the right boxes, they're very much box checkers at the VA. So they will kick it back and kick it back and kick it back. And they want proof for everything. Every number we put on an application, we try to put a piece of proof behind that, a bank statement or a proof of income or a tax statement. So in general, the VA benefit is a pension. Most people are familiar with VA compensation or disability. A lot of veterans get 10 or 20% disability for hearing loss or an injury or an illness they sustained, which is deemed service connected while they were in the service or due to their service. So that's VA disability. We don't really do VA disability, or we just don't. And it's a different program altogether. The program of aid and attendance is age-related health issues. So everybody has age-related health issues eventually, and it is a pension program, whereas the disability is a compensation. So there's really 5 qualifications for the aid and attendance pension. It's service 1 day of active duty during a time of war, not service during or in the war, but during wartime. An honorable discharge, a health issue to where you need some help with activities of daily living, getting through your day, income and expense to where you're spending a fair amount of your income, if not all of it, on healthcare costs, reoccurring monthly healthcare costs, like in-home care, like assisted living, medication costs, health insurance, things like that. They even allow you to pay anyone but your spouse as a caregiver. So that helps with care costs sometimes. And then assets, which they bumped up from a very nebulous number prior to 2018 to about $130,000. They kind of went out and sold Medicaid's spousal benefit amount. But anybody, couple or single, can have about $130,000, a house on 2 acres or less, a car, and a couple of other things. But you can have a fair amount and still qualify. It's based on VA service of a veteran and a spouse. It's also eligible to, it's one of the few VA programs that extend to a spouse, whether the veteran is alive or not, as long as you are married to that veteran's spouse currently or at the time of their death and not remarried to someone else. Your veteran spouse can be your 5th spouse, but it has to be your current or last spouse. And then that benefit pays anywhere from about $1,244 a month for a surviving spouse to about $1,936 for a veteran, and up to about $2,266 for a couple, and then a few other numbers in between depending on who's ill and who isn't, dependents. But it is a monthly cash pension based off service and health issues and finances. That's why I said it's about 45 pages of application. It takes a while to get done, anywhere from 2 to 4, 6 months, depending on how many questions they want to ask and whose desk it landed on. Kind of like you said earlier about SACOA, it depends on whose desk it lands on and if they're working from home or if they're back in the office or if they have questions or if they're new. But it is a fantastic program. It's a tax-free monthly benefit. So anywhere, it's close to about $23,000 a year for a veteran. So when it comes to in-home care and assisted living, that is a huge tool for those who qualify.
Absolutely.
I'll just cover the Medicaid piece since Wes did a really good job explaining the veterans aid and attendance, pension, and that you don't have to be destitute to receive it. Sometimes, unfortunately, though, the VA pension is not as helpful in that some people, even with the addition of the pension, simply don't have enough income coming in to cover the cost of their care. And that's sometimes where Medicaid can be more beneficial because it's really designed to pick up the difference between monthly income and the costs of care. But like the VA, especially if an individual is part of a married couple, there are certain rules which apply, which automatically allow a couple to retain certain assets in the event one part of the couple needs care, because we don't want to impoverish one spouse in order to provide for the needs of the other. So under Medicaid rules, in the event one spouse in a married couple does need care, the spouse at home who's not in need of care is automatically allowed to keep a home of any value. They can keep keep their vehicle. If they have more than one vehicle, they'll want to keep the one that is worth the most. They can keep any retirement accounts in the name of the spouse not in need of care. And then they can keep 1/2 of the remaining assets, currently up to a maximum of $130,280. So there's quite a bit that can be retained for a spouse not in need of care. There are some other exceptions that I won't get into the full details about, but it is a mistake to think that, especially with a married couple, if one individual needs care, that they have to spend down to only the $2,000 limit, because there are lots of assets that can actually be retained, so we don't impoverish one spouse to provide for the needs of the other.
And I think does that apply with Medicaid and Medicaid waiver, or?
Yes, the same rules apply to both Medicaid and Medicaid waiver. And in case you're unfamiliar with those concepts, traditional Medicaid was really designed to pay for the cost of care in a nursing home. Medicaid waiver has the same rules as traditional Medicaid in a nursing home, but it's designed to provide care either in home-based settings or in assisted living, as opposed to a traditional nursing home. But the rules for obtaining a benefit under those programs are the same, whether it is under the waiver for home-based care or assisted living, or in a traditional nursing home.
I would think that people want to be well aware of the waiver, because I don't think people understand it that well. And it seems like a new assisted living is popping up every other day with that takes it. So it's becoming much more available to people. So
and we're very lucky to live in a state where we have what we call age in place benefits. So, we don't require people who start to need care to move out and have to go to a nursing home before they're ready. We can get assistance to keep them independent and safe in their homes or in assisted living, rather than having to automatically go the nursing home route.
Well, it only makes sense, and you would think it would be more spread because it's less expensive. So there's that opportunity as well. So it saves the government money if they will follow this pattern. So, well, that's, there's so many things, like, for instance, I don't have them on here, but there's a Caregiver Homes, which is an organization that's all across the state, that if you, as a family member, wanted to take care of a loved one in their home, they can get you into like a Medicaid waiver program as well, and then actually even pay that family member a stipend to help support their family, which I think that's a huge benefit for people that are trying to do that. I know that, my mom would have qualified. I didn't know about it back then, so that would have worked. Jamie, you're trying to get ahead of people and help people have some options here, and maybe to where they don't need to do this quite as quickly. Tell us a little bit about Wes brought it up. Tell us a little bit about the insurance policies that you can provide there, or that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Long-term care insurance is quite possibly the most important thing a family can do to protect themselves. And we've heard a lot of reasons of, things that could happen if you don't plan ahead. But long-term care insurance is a fantastic option if you're healthy enough to qualify for it and you've got the resources to pay for it. But the beautiful thing about it is that we've really got, if you start young enough, we've got a policy for everybody in every situation. And the reason that is there are a lot of different styles of long-term care policies. There's one company that offers a Cadillac version, which is an unlimited policy that would pay for as long as you need care. So if you're in a family that's got a history of dementia or Alzheimer's, that could be a very good option. They also offer a policy for couples. So you get a discount for being married. And that is the absolute best way to protect yourself ahead of time if you've done that. If you can't afford that, or if you don't think you need that, there are policies that will pay for 2 years of coverage or 5 years, somewhere in between. That would be a tremendous opportunity. And then for people that can't afford that, or we've got a different situation, you can buy a life insurance policy with a long-term care rider. I just did one recently for a friend. He's got $1 million death benefit because he's worried that something may happen to him and he's going to lose his income. And then I asked him if he had long-term care insurance, and he said no. He's like, but I just turned 50 and my mom has dementia. What should I do? I said, well, let's put a 2% long-term care rider on this policy. It'll pay him $20,000 a month if he ever needs care. Right now, we know it's not going to cost him $20,000 a month. It might cost him 4 to 8. That'll last him 10 years or longer. But if he doesn't need it for 20 or 25 years, it may cost $20,000 a month. And that'll still provide his family almost 5 years of long-term care insurance. So really, when we work with people, we're independent. We really listen to what they need and what their situation is, and then go back and help them. One thing that we're working with now is for younger people that can't afford the amount of coverage they need. Let's start with a small policy. Just get started with something. because we're seeing people younger and younger get diagnosed with dementia and other issues. I mean, I had a friend recently that was 57 and passed away with dementia, and it was horrible. And she got diagnosed when she was in her early 50s. People have always said you shouldn't even consider it until you're 60. Now people are saying 50, but it's really even younger than that. You have to be careful. So we're having people start with a smaller policy, but the reasons are not as much financial as they are the benefits that come along with it. If you have a long-term care policy, they walk you through all the services that are available. And what I mean by that is they're going to help train your family how to care for you properly if you want to stay at home. They're going to bring in the durable medical equipment that you need to be cared for properly. If your family needs to still work, they're going to pay for adult daycare. They're going to pay for respite care for up to 21 days a year. When you do need somebody to come in, long-term care insurance will pay for those people to come in. It'll pay to help you get fitted in the right community when you're ready to move. It'll pay for a hospital stay for up to 21 days, not the actual hospital stay, but they'll hold your bed if you go in the hospital for 21 days. It's not a big deal here in Indianapolis where there's a lot of communities, a lot of different opportunities. But if you're in a small community and there's a waiting list, there's potential. If you go to the hospital, you lose your bed. And these are things that people don't consider when they're going through this process. These are the reasons people do these things by themselves and make it really hard on themselves and make it hard on their families. But if you have access to this long-term care insurance and your care concierge that's going to help walk you through these things, you're really going to see the benefits of the policy that you buy. And that's true no matter what you buy. And the other thing is now all these policies that we offer, the premiums are guaranteed, meaning that whatever price you buy in will never go up. You can pay it off in 5 years. You can pay it off in 10 years, 20 years. You can pay for life. You can do it in a lump sum up front. So there's a lot of different options for every budget. But the key thing is if you don't use it or you don't use all of the benefits, it comes with a tax-free death benefit for your family. So it's no longer use it or lose it. All you're doing is moving conservative money from here to over here. If you leave it here, you take a risk of spending through all that and having a conversation with Rebecca or Wes. If you move it over here, the long-term care insurance will pay for a lot of that. And then you don't have to worry about things like other people may have to. And the nice thing about that also is some of the policies that people have now are tremendous if you can afford it, but the companies really fight with you to get access to your benefits. With these policies, the insurance company doesn't fight as hard because they're either going to pay the benefit while you're living or they're going to pay the benefit when you're gone. So it doesn't matter to them to fight with you. If you need the benefits, they're going to pay it out as long as you qualify. And that's a huge opportunity for people now to have to be able to plan ahead for things. That's why I do a lot of networking in assisted living communities and different senior events, because I may not be able to help that patient that's currently being cared for, but they have spouses and they have adult children that need help. And those are the conversations we need to have because they've looked at what's happened to their parents and they have to be thinking, how can I protect myself? How can I protect my kids from going through what we've went through? And that's really the best way to do it. And then on top of that, I do have access to a home health care plan now that is absolutely fantastic for people that can't afford long-term care insurance or they can't get it because of their health. This home health care plan is completely guaranteed issue up to age 85. So if you're in a situation where you've had a diagnosis that will prevent you from getting long-term care insurance, or you can't afford it, this home health care plan could pay for up to $500 a day in home health care, and it's very inexpensive. And that is an absolute good policy to have for anybody. Or if you've got a small long-term care policy that'll only pay out 2 years, let's get this home health care plan and let that pay for your care in your house. And then let your long-term care policy pay for care if you ever need to move into a community. And that is a tremendous asset for people. And it's something that I've talked to many people about because they just don't know that it's available. And I would say that's the key to this entire conversation. You have to talk to people. It's not about trying to figure it out yourself, because if you figure it out yourself, you're going to do it wrong. You're going to get on the internet, you're going to see one thing, you're going to go with that one thing, and you're going to miss everything else around it. That's why you need to have this group of experts. And that's why we need to continue to have these conversations, because people need to know what's out there. And this is the only way we're going to be able to help them do that.
Well, that's great points. And you were talking about, what the cost of care is. I mean, we just had a situation where a family member of mine is in an assisted living, but had a health crisis that needed care beyond what the assisted living could do. So we end up bringing in 8 hours a day of home care, which adds about another $10,000 on top of the other expenses. So, it's, fortunately, it looks like it's going to come to, she's improved enough that I think we'll be able to start going away from that. But you're right. There's a lot of expenses that come out there. While we're talking about planning ahead, so Jamie's got us there. Let's go back and have Rebecca and Wes, if you could help me plan ahead on the 5-year look back, the 3-year look back, what that really means, what could be done to, today for someone that's trying to prepare for it, and how to do that. Later on, we'll go into what happens if you didn't, but so I'll let you guys go from there, whoever wants to start off on that.
Sure. I'll jump in and do a little bit. So yeah, the look back in Indiana is 5 years, which just means from the day you apply for Medicaid, they want to know what you've been up to get yourself eligible. So really they're looking for the person who wants to give away their assets, wait 24 hours and apply for Medicaid. That's how they catch you, or they determine that, you do or don't qualify for Medicaid. So with the 5-year look back, those that don't have any assets at all, it doesn't really matter, because if you haven't given anything away to get yourself eligible for Medicaid, then you qualify, immediately or quickly. So it's the folks who have assets that would need to look at that. Now, again, in a spousal case, we can usually throw just about everything over to the healthy spouse or the at-home or non-applicant spouse. But in the case of a single person, is really kind of when that look back comes into play. So if you want to plan for that, so, you had talked about the diagnosis of Alzheimer's and things like that. If someone has an early diagnosis of Alzheimer's, right now, we kind of all know where that's going to go. In the next 5-10 years, we know where that's going to go. I mean, at least we have a good idea, depending on what your other issues are. So it's always a good idea to consolidate first, right? Because people that come to us have had 80 years to open 1 million different accounts, and we've got to identify them, find them, deal with them. They won't talk to you if you're not the power of attorney or you're not the person. And if that person has an issue or a health issue to where they can't communicate on the phone, now you're backing up to getting, is there a power of attorney and all that, just to identify, because we really can't go forward until we identify what we're looking at. And if I've had 95-year-old clients whose kids are 70 and the kids have no idea what the parents have. And that's always the first hurdle, is what are we dealing with? And then once you figure that out, then you look at what can be protected, what is exempt, what needs to be spent, and all of the different kind of things like that. So the sooner the better. If there's a mobility issue, if there's a cognitive issue, if somebody's just 85 years and old and living by themselves, something's going to happen in the next number of years. It's always a good idea to start having that conversation. So if nothing else, the kids are up to speed on where things are and what they are, and should we be pulling them out of the market? Should they be in, bank accounts? How many bank accounts should they have? That kind of thing. So yeah, kind of like I said earlier, the sooner we can get on it, the better. Identifying and consolidation help us tremendously and helps the family move forward. And then I'll kind of let Rebecca talk about, what you do with it from there.
Yeah, as Wes was saying, we have a look back period that applies for Medicaid in Indiana, and it's a federal rule. Actually, it's 5 years. And so Medicaid basically wants to know if you've given away or transferred any assets 5 years prior to a Medicaid application that could have been used to pay for your care costs. And so if the answer is yes, there's actually going to be a penalty period assessed by the state during which Medicaid benefits won't be available to an individual to pay for the cost of their care because they gave away assets that could have been used to do so. And so sometimes people come to see us and they're concerned about that 5-year look back period, and they want to know if they can transfer assets now to get that 5-year period started, so that at the end of that 5-year period, there's a certain amount of their assets which are protected. And so that is really where pre-planning comes in, as Wes alluded to, asset consolidation, making sure that we put assets in correct titles, so that if we're going to get that look back period started as an asset preservation tool, we understand what to do and how best to do it. But there are pluses and minuses associated with that type of planning, and you have to not only take into account the look back period, but also potential tax consequences of moving assets. Some things are easily able to be planned with, some things are not, like retirement accounts are not something you can really pre-plan with, because typically if you have money in an IRA or 401k, in order to do any sort of pre-planning, we'd have to withdraw all the funds and pay taxes. So that's not typically a good pre-planning vehicle. Similarly, there is a 3-year look back period, which applies to the benefits under the VA. And the VA wants to know if you've made any gifts of assets that could have been used to pay for your care during the 3 years prior to an application for aid and attendance pension benefits. And if so, they too will assess a penalty during which VA benefits would not apply. The penalty calculation for both the Medicaid and the VA is based on dividing the amount given away by a certain penalty divisor factor. The calculations are not the same under each benefit. The VA has separate rules from those which apply to Medicaid. So you have to make sure you go to someone and you've weighed the pros and cons of making the transfer as part of a pre-planning strategy before you go about doing so.
So what would be one of the vehicles, or if you decide you want to do that, how would someone do that? And you know, because you're transferring things. Now, obviously, if you're wanting to give, you know, money to kids or something, that's one thing. But what if you're trying to protect the asset? How do you, what would something be done?
Typically, we would use an asset protection trust, otherwise known as an irrevocable trust, to potentially hold on assets and put someone in charge of those assets so that they can be protected. There are certain benefits from using an irrevocable trust that are different from just making an outright gift. There are potential income tax benefits that are available to the family if you use a trust, as opposed to giving an asset directly to a child, in addition to protecting that asset in the event that your child is sued if after something is transferred to him or her. So typically that's the vehicle we would use, but it really depends on the family situation and what assets they have and what's going to work best for them based on the types of assets they have and their family dynamics.
Very good. Well, one of the things that I have, okay, well, let's say, for instance, now we've talked about how to get ahead of it. What if we didn't get ahead of it? What if you're like my family and you always wait till, oh my God, crisis moment? So what can be done at that stage in either one of these scenarios to protect somebody as much as they can? Now, you've already answered, if they're married, it's a pretty simple thing to do.
Yeah, it's not nothing simple, but
okay.
But there's lots more tools with spouse. You know, Indiana has fantastic spousal rules, and every once in a while somebody will come in and say, well, I was told I needed to get a divorce and, you know, get a divorce on paper and claim the assets. And I usually say, well, somebody hasn't opened a book in 35 years. But you hear that, like you said, if you go looking on the internet and you start finding old things or other state things or, you know, commentary or whatever. So yes, under spousal rules, we have a lot more tools to protect things. Yes, we might have to move some IRAs or sell some stock or cash in a CD, but that's kind of what I call the cost of doing business. But under a what I would say single person, you know, rule of thumb is usually we can save about half. It all depends on income and expense. You know, if they're going to assisted living, we're going to do a Medicaid waiver and their income's high, yeah, we could probably save 80% of what they have left. If they're going to a very skilled care, long-term care that's $10,000 a month and they only make $1,000, then okay, we can save 30 or 40%. You know, we rarely ever let any of our clients go broke, but it is a factor of what the care cost is, what the income is, and how much assets. So let's say somebody has $100,000 and we want to protect half of that. Well, then that divisor penalty that Rebecca spoke about is just a little short of $7,000. So for every close to $7,000 we give away, Medicaid is going to penalize you 1 month or not provide services. So you have to be otherwise eligible to have that clock start. So there would be some transferring of assets to a trust. Again, if you have 5 kids, the last thing anybody wants to do is divide the assets between 5 kids and hope we get it back. That's a recipe for disaster. So therefore, that, you know, an attorney would set up an irrevocable trust for the right situation to hold assets so that they can be managed for the parent, but not owned by the parent. And then the other, you know, in that scenario, protecting $50,000, then the other half would be used to pay for care during the ineligibility or penalty period. So, you know, you can spend down to zero all by yourself. You don't need anybody's help for that. Or you can protect, you know, 30 to 80% of your assets depending on care costs. And incomes and different things with help. Now, under the Medicaid waiver that pays for in-home care and assisted living, most of the time we'll go ahead and apply for VA benefits as well, because all it does is increase the income, and it allows a little bit more money to be kept. Usually in lower to middle income folks, we would do the VA benefit as well as the Medicaid waiver. If you're going to a nursing home on traditional Medicaid, you're going to owe about everything but $52 in your income anyway, so it doesn't really matter. VA doesn't make sense. It's not worth the effort. But that again is a plug for why to talk to someone, because there's so many moving parts that have so many different sets of rules that can be applied at different times based on your situation. So call and ask. Self-help is kind of like self-surgery. Don't barely recommend that you don't try that. So
now you've got so basically that's how we can do some things, with some trust and what have you. What you brought up, I thought I heard you just say that you can also merge both the VA benefits and Medicaid like waiver benefits. Is that something that can be done?
Oh, absolutely. If one of my clients this morning made $1,000 a month total, and if they go to an assisted living here in Indiana and get a studio apartment, then they would pay $794 for that. Well, they get to keep the difference between their income and that $794 to pay for other things like health insurance or cable TV or haircuts. Well, if we can add that $1,244 VA benefit to that spouse, then they could keep, maybe $1,200 or $1,300 a month to spend on their own needs versus just a couple $100. So when the math is right, yes, we can use VA benefits in cooperation with the Medicaid benefits. But again, if you're going to a nursing home on full traditional Medicaid, it doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't really work out. Or if you make $4,000 or $5,000 a month, it doesn't really work out either. But that again is part of the analysis that we do to maximize what we can do for you. But like Rebecca said, Indiana has fantastic rules to provide care and really nice new places. When we talk about Medicaid, we're not talking about dirty old. We're talking about places that just opened, brand new, assisted living, in-home care, nice facilities. The old. If you're having experience with a place that's old and smelly and whatever, you need to be out of there, because there are fantastic places that accept Medicaid around the state.
Yeah, that has changed. That's definitely a perception that people have that is not true. And part of that perception could be because people were told that, it's, I was actually told when we were first getting into the senior world with my in-laws, the senior community we went to, because it was in their best interest, we paid privately, told us that they basically made us believe if we let our parents get into a Medicaid situation, that we were like the worst people on the earth and putting them into a sub point, type. And we were diligent. We ended up, paying for 2 funerals out of pocket because we didn't know any better. We burnt through every penny they had, so there's a lot of misconceptions out there. That's one reason I'm doing these videos, to try to help people, because I'm in conversations all the time with people because of this. And it's amazing how few really understand what's available. It's sad.
Well, and Jim, to touch on that a little bit, I'm not that old, but I believe there used to be Medicaid wings and Medicaid. Well, I guess best to say a Medicaid wing of a facility where the Medicaid people went. Well, nowadays with HIPAA rules and HIPAA laws and privacy and all of that, you can walk in the front door of a facility and out the back door, and you can't tell me who's on Medicaid and who is and who isn't. Really, only the business office really cares, because they're going to bill it differently. So one of the improvements has been the fact that people on Medicaid and people who aren't on Medicaid are in the facility together, mixed in, and they all eat at the same place and see the same doctors and do the same activities. So that stigma of Medicaid puts you in the basement and feeds you wood chips is long gone, because that shouldn't happen anywhere, especially today. So
in other words, you're saying if you're in a facility that's subpar because you think that's what you have to be,
that's your fault. Get out.
Get out.
So, yeah.
Very good. we've talked about irrevocable trust. We've talked about these different things. Miller's Trust, is that one of the things that's a tool that's used in that? People may hear that word or.
Oh, Rebecca, I'll let you have that one.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure Wes and I hear this one all the time because people believe that a Miller Trust is a planning tool to help preserve assets, but that's not actually the case. A Miller Trust is actually a requirement of Medicaid application process if an individual has income above the income cap in Indiana. So we have a certain amount that you cannot receive above in order to qualify for Medicaid. And that current cap is $2,382 per month gross income. To the extent an individual has income which exceeds that amount, they can qualify for benefits, but they're going to be required to allocate their income in above that limit to a separate bank account each month. And that's what a Miller Trust is. It's a segregation of the income an individual earns on a monthly basis above the income cap. And the reason it's called a Miller Trust is because it is a result of a case out of Colorado involving Mrs. Miller. They sued the state of Colorado, which has similar rules to Indiana, because Colorado also had an income cap. And the Miller family said it's not fair that people can have income above the cap, but not enough money to pay for their care and not receive Medicaid. And the government agreed, and the federal law became that an individual in an income cap state can still qualify for Medicaid, but they're required to allocate their income, which is above that cap, to a separate account each month and then use it to pay towards their care costs. So a Miller Trust is simply a part of the application process. It is not used in any way to shelter assets if an individual is trying to qualify for Medicaid.
And it just basically helps you if you're over a little bit over the income is really what it comes down. Big,
Yeah,
big over, you're not going to be able to fix it, but little over.
Right.
Yeah.
If you have enough income to pay for your cost of care, you're not going to be obtaining Medicaid anyway.
Right.
But if you have $4,000 of income a month and the income cap is $2,382, you're going to have a little bit over $1,600 a month that's going to have to go in this account and then be used towards care expenses on a monthly basis.
So that's kind of how a lot of times you can get your Social Security and your VA and still qualify. Is that correct?
Right. Well, and that helps us do the math, you know. So again,
Yeah.
if somebody makes $3,500 a month, then no, it doesn't make any sense to do the VA benefit because it's just going to further the amount that you have to put into the Miller's Trust. And I kind of liken the Miller's Trust to like a health savings account or a medical savings account. There's certain expenses you can pay for out of the Miller Trust. Really what Medicaid's saying is, for those high income earners who earn $2,382 or more, they want you to participate a little bit more in your health costs. So those dollars of income over that amount, they usually want you to contribute towards your health care. So it still allows you to keep the amount under that, depending on what you pay the facility in assisted living or in-home care, depending on the setting. So a lot of people will tell you, and sometimes SACOA may misunderstand it, and they will tell all my clients, you know, if you don't do Medicaid, you need a Miller Trust. Well, not unless the applicant makes a gross amount, and gross is tricky because gross is not what hits the bank account. Gross is what you get paid by your pension and Social Security and any other sources of income that equal over 2,382. So it's always a bummer when you get somebody who makes $2,390 in income and you have to do a Miller Trust, which is basically setting up a bank account to hold some of your income. But again, it's one of those things where it only triggers if you need it. And not everybody needs it to get Medicaid, but you can't get Medicaid without it. So,
yeah. Well, I appreciate, I know that and this is one of I'm making a pitch back for you guys, why people need to call you, because I know in my situation, I'm a trustee and a guardian and a POA for a couple of my family members. And I bring my wife in periodically and have her look at the accounts the way they're set up. You've got the trust account, you've got the guardianship account, you've got all these different things. And she just walks out of the room and says she'll call the attorney when if she needs them, but it's putting all these layers together. I can talk about it and be dangerous, but there's no way I could set it up, and that's what I'm trying to tell people. They need to be talking to you guys, because when we tried to do it ourselves, the first time back with my in-laws, 18 months of trying to just fill out the VA papers and getting rejection slips back, and I finally got mad and called, my son was a campaign manager for a local congressman. And so I called him and got it, within 24 hours. But when you shouldn't have to know someone in Congress to be able to get your VA
Right.
benefits, so it's it didn't make me any much happier. But that's what I'm trying to get these people to understand and get people to know about you guys. What kind of tips would you like to reach out and tell people about? Some things that we have not covered that you would like to make sure that people are aware.
Well, and I got to hop off here in a couple minutes, but try to find as much as you can before you have a meeting with someone. Obviously, it helps to have a meeting to find out what you need to do and can do. But I always say, look if somebody's filing taxes, grab their last tax return filed, because stapled to the back of that are W-2s and 1099s and all the different places that pay somebody a nickel or a dime or a wage or a pension. So grab a hold of that. Get a POA created and signed as soon as you can, because when, again, I'm not an attorney, but when you lose capacity, you cannot, it's my understanding, you cannot get a POA signed. So don't wait to get POAs, wills, living wills, those things. Get those things done today. Don't get them done when you're 80 or 85. Get them done right now, because there comes a point in time where you can't have those legal docs done, and then you don't want to have to turn to a guardianship, which is a whole nother box of fun. So at least get let your kids understand what you have, make a list of things, get your POAs, your legal docs in order. If mom passed away and her name's been on the house for 15 years, trying to get that kind of stuff cleaned up, because it's just eminently more difficult when there's a cognitive issue or a health or mobility issue. It's even more difficult after someone passes away. Everything just becomes increasingly difficult as health and death happens. So, kind of get your affairs in order now while you're young and healthy and able, because nothing's easier to do while someone's alive and able to help out. So that would be my one plug, is get your shopping. It's kind of like the plumber whose house leaks. Get your shop in order before you need all this. It'll make everybody's life easier. So.
Very good. Rebecca?
Yeah, my tips are similar, I think, to what Wes said. I think that the most way you can help your family, the best way really, is to be proactive about things that often we don't consider sharing with our loved ones. So in order to adapt well in a crisis, it's really helpful to have certain pieces of information ahead of time. So if you can provide your loved ones with things like copies of your health insurance cards, lists of your doctors that you see, passwords if you are comfortable sharing them, a list of assets.
Did we lose Rebecca, or is it me?
Advisors associated with those accounts or the institution where they're held, and the sources of income you receive on a monthly basis, as well as making sure they have copies of legal documents if you've appointed them to act in some way. Those things are going to ensure that the person that you've put in charge can act for you right away in the terms of a crisis, instead of having to go find that information in order to assist you. So I would do that. And then if you take nothing else away from our program here today, definitely, if you're concerned about these issues, please go talk to someone who's knowledgeable. If you're concerned about long-term care and you're young and healthy, or even not as young, but still in relatively good health, please go talk to Jamie about long-term care insurance as about a potential option. Or if you're in a crisis or a situation with someone who's an older adult, please see someone who can assist you in making sure you understand the rules which would apply to your situation related to the type of public benefits your loved one might need to apply for.
Yeah, I always say neighbor Bob always gives the worst advice. So don't listen to neighbor Bob. He had a bad experience and he's going to lead you down the wrong road. So, and if you do hear advice from somebody, please get a second or third or fourth opinion, because even in our industry, among folks, that don't always just focus in this area, that only dabble in it, you're going to hear different advice like spend down and you can't do this and you can't do that. And that's not always the case. Like I said, the rules in Indiana are fantastic and you should be able to take advantage of. Rebecca and I are really pretty good at this, but we can't get your money back once it's gone, and we can't help you once you've made tremendous mistakes. And we can't help you if you haven't gotten the right care. Care is the first most important thing. It's more important than your money is the right care. And don't leave mom or dad in a condo or an apartment or something without care just because you're afraid of the money. So we can protect some of the money. We can take care of that. Get advice now. Don't not seek correct information.
Excellent.
Absolutely. What I would say is get all of your advisors in the same room. You want to have a meeting with your elder law attorney, your accountant, your financial planner, and have them all put their heads together to make sure that we're doing what's best for you and your family. And then after you've had that conversation, have that same conversation with your family and let them know what's happening. Some people are, they don't want to tell their kids what they've got. You don't have to give them all the details, but you want to tell them what your plan is to make sure they execute your legacy the way you want it executed. It can't be a surprise when you're gone. They have to be roped into the conversation. If you've done very well, you should treat your estate plan like a family business. And your kids may not be taking over your job, your career, your business, but they're taking over your legacy. And you want to make sure that they're on board with that, to make sure that they do things exactly the way you want them to be executed, and make sure they understand what's going to happen when you're gone. And, on a minor basis, I would tell people that it's just as important to eliminate debt before you retire than it is to have wealth. You want to make sure not only are you going to have money to pay for things, but you don't have a lot of things to pay for. And that's a huge thing that people miss. And that could be paying off your cars, could be paying off your credit cards. It could be not having a mortgage, whether that's paying off the mortgage or using a reverse mortgage. That's one thing that we haven't gotten into, the ability to use a reverse mortgage for a lot of things in retirement. It's not what it used to be. It's not in case of emergency anymore. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. It could be a financial planning tool to help you accomplish a lot of these things you want to accomplish. But get all of these advisors together in one spot. I've had an opportunity to help families sell old life insurance policies. People don't realize that's even an option. And they may have $1 million or $2 million death benefit policy from when they were working. Now they're retired. They're trying to eliminate expenses. They're like, I don't want to pay for that premium anymore. Or maybe we've exhausted the cash value. Maybe we just don't need it. And they're going to let that policy lapse for whatever the cash value is. You don't have to do that. If you're a little bit older, you've had a medical diagnosis, we can talk about selling that policy and potentially getting your family hundreds of thousands of dollars that can be used to pay for these things that we've talked about today. It could be used to pay for your care. It could be used to pay for long-term care insurance. It could be used to pay for your grandkids' college, whatever you deem that money to be used for. People don't even know that's an option. And we could even do that for an old term policy. If it's got a convertibility clause, people think, oh, it's term, it's just going to lapse one day, it'll be gone. That's not necessarily true. That's why it's so important to make sure that you're roping all of your advisors in together, because people, we haven't said this, but people just don't know what they don't know. And if you're putting a bunch of smart people together in one room, eventually they're going to come up with something that's great for you and your family. And they're going to help you pass that legacy on that you want to pass on and help you survive crisis times like we've talked about. And that's why these conversations are so important to me.
Excellent. Well, guys,
Jim, I gotta scoot real quick. So thank you much. Thanks, Rebecca and Jamie. I gotta scoot off to go see somebody. So
well, sounds very good. Let me do real quick to show you guys something real quick that are on here. One thing, you can go to Life's Copilot. You look at resources, and under your video library, this will be in there if you want to watch it again or you want to share it with someone. Also, we have events coming up. We have, today's event that just got finished. The 28th, we're doing one on Medicare because open enrollment is coming up, so that we're going to try to help you with that. We have a mental health one coming up, how to deal with probate. So we've got a lot of different things coming up soon. So you can always find it at lifescopilot.com. So guys, thank you so much for being here. Rebecca, for Jamie, thank you so much. I think that I'm so excited about getting this information out to people because, like I said, I was in a conversation yesterday with someone. This was all like total, they had no idea that these things were available. So we just need to get the word out. So thank you much, guys.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.